Okay guys, we're back at the cabin. We're going to start putting up our rafters, but before we can put rafters up, we have to lay them out. And the way that I do that is with framing square. Now on a framing square, you have a short side, you have what's called a tongue and a blade, and each one of them, you have measurements on the outside, which is 16 inches on the outside, 24 on the outside of this one. So what we're looking for is we're looking for our plumb line cut up here. In order to get that, our roof is going to be at a 10-12 pitch. So there's a 10. We go to the 10 on our framing square right here, and I put it on this side, and then I come down here on the inside, and I put it on 12. Make sure you're on the same side of the square with both of them. And once I have that, then I put my plumb line on. Our building is 16 feet wide, so we have to do 8 feet of that, which is half. So we're going to lay out 8 steps down this board, and then I'm going to show you how to do a heel cut and allow for the ridge at the top. Okay guys, you see I have 3 marks on my board here. What I'm after is I laid out my 8 marks down the board because we had 8 foot to the center of our building. We have an 1.5 inch thick ridge going at the top, so technically half of the 1.5 inch ridge is 3/4 of an inch. So I would have to shorten this board 3/4 of an inch back this away in order to compensate for the thickness of half the thickness of the ridge at the top. But because I'm allowing for my plywood to go all the way to the top of the building, my plywood is 5/8 of an inch. So all it left would have been just 1/8 of an inch, and I think I'm just going to leave it like this because what that'll do is give me an 1/8 of an inch play to be able to slide that plywood up in here on the wall to be able to install it. And the reason I kept stepping up my board here is I'm looking for a full 3.5 inches to set on my top plate, which would be right here. That leaves me 5/8 of an inch at the end here for my plywood to slide up on my bird mouth on the wall here. I know that may be a little confusing, but once we put these up, I think you'll see what I'm talking about, because what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a mark right here. Now once I saw this out, that reference mark will still be there. When we put this rafter up on top, my top plate will go right here. Now I'm going to take a board here and I'm going to show you what this will look like. Just hang on just a second. Let's say that this 2x4 right here is our top plate. And this is how it will set on our top plate, like this right here. Now if you come around here, you'll see this 2x4 comes right to the edge of this board right here, and I have the full width of the rafter sitting on my top plate. That gives me plenty of nailing room right here, plenty of surface. Now we're not too much worried about this because we've only got like a 14-inch overhang that we're going to have, so that's perfect for that. So this is going to be our pattern rafter. What we're going to do is we're going to cut 2 of them. We're going to lay them out on the floor to make sure that they actually fit like they're supposed to fit before we get up there with them. And once we do that, then we'll know exactly how high to make our ridge, and we can put our story pole under our ridge and get everything ready, and our rafters can all be cut because they're all identical. So we're going to get this cut out, and then we're going to get up there. We're going to lay it out on the floor after we get them cut out, and we're going to see if we can show you then what it actually looks like. Okay guys, this is what's called a bird's mouth. This is what sits on your top plate. Okay guys, the rafter I just cut, I marked pattern on it. Now we're going to use that same rafter to mark every rafter once we know it's right. The next thing we want to do is when we lay our boards up here, we want to crown them. And simply what a crown, like we talked about in our other videos, is the arch in the board. We want the arch to go up so that the weight of the roof will actually push down and help to straighten it. So we've crowned this one. Then what we simply do is we lay this one on top of it. And we make sure, it's very important, that you make sure the top of this board is flush all the way down. Especially this cut and the bird mouth cut. Now the rest of it may have a crown in it, but you want to make sure where the bird mouth is and where this is flush on the top so that your marks are exactly every time. Okay guys, I've got my rafters in here. What I've done was come from the outside edge of my plate in 17 inches. I've done the same thing on each end of the house with the rafter tails. And put the bird mouth exactly where it would go on the top plate, because that plate and that plate mimic the top plates of the house. I laid them up here, and what I've done was took a 2x4 and I marked the width of my ridge, which is 7 1/4 inches here, and I laid my rafters down against it. And as you can see, our plumb cuts fit perfect on each side. So laying it out with a framing square actually works, and works very well. So now we know that this will work. I pulled a string across the bottom of it here. This string mimics the ceiling height in the house. So what I've done was I come from the bottom of the ridge board here to this string, and that tells me the height of my ridge board needs to go up top, so I can go through the house and I can put, I call them story poles. There's 100 different names, depends on the carpenter is what they call it. I will nail my story poles up there, and that way I know what the height of my ridge is. I can set my ridge, and then I can nail my lay my rafters out and set my rafters on up against my ridge, and I don't have to worry about the height of it because I've already got it right. And that is how I get my roof layout for building a roof. Okay guys, this is a ridge board we've got here. This here is the end that hangs out. This is our overhang from outside. What we have here, we're going to have about a 15.5 to 16 inch overhang. So I went 15 inches and I cut the board down to 6.5 inches because we're going on a 10-12 pitch. That'll allow my soffit work to pass my rafters and come up in here and actually center out in the bottom. Now there'll be a band nailed on the outside of that, which will give us a full 16.5 inches. There's going to be a 1/2 inch of plywood going on the outside of the house, which will give us a 16-inch overhang on our gable end. Okay guys, this will be our first rafter right here. Then we go, what I did is hook on to this part right here. I come 23 1/4, set ahead, that's our 2-foot mark. We'll do the same thing throughout it, 47 1/4, and so on down through there. And what I've done was, I didn't just mark it on one side because your rafters have to be all the way around it. I took and transferred my marks all the way over to the other side of the board, all the way down. And then when I got to the end of the board, I do something a little different than other people. A lot of people would simply just come 3/4 of an inch and whack their ridge board off and let the other ridge board join. I don't do that because to me that makes a flimsy roof. What I've done is I cut a 4-foot angle all the way down my ridge here so that my next ridge board, when I cut it, will fit right up under the bottom of it, and I can toenail it under the bottom, I can toenail it through the top, and I can put the metal clips down the side of this, and it makes a very strong ridge doing it that way. So I don't do the square butt on ridges. That's why you'll see this. Now I did lose almost 4 foot of my board right here. I lost like 45 inches of my board by doing that. But guys, it's worth it to me to have a strong ridge on a house. Now this right here is what I call a saddle. This is what I'm going to be nailing up to help me hold the ridge up, because I'm going to be up there working by myself, and I've got to have a way to hold the ridge up. So this pole is what I call my story pole. It's exactly from this end to that end the height of the ridge. So once I nail this in, I'll be able to hold the ridge up with it without having to hold it by hand. Now we have another story pole we're going to put on the end of the house. We'll have two of them up that will actually sit on this ridge. I'll give you an idea. It'll actually sit like this right here. And it'll actually hold the ridge up once we get it up on top of the roof up there.